This is you, Rhonda.
Yeah.
So we're not sharing video. We're meeting.
I'm Jessica Lemon of AARP Texas, and I am pleased that AARP is a proud sponsor of the Striking a Balance Caregiver Conference. As a sponsor, we hope that you're gaining new insights into family caregiving and that you have the opportunity to connect with other caregivers and experts on aging. Family caregiving is a priority for AARP. It is essential to our work today, but that's not all. AARP is doing amazing things to make life better for the age 50+ populations and the generations to follow. We help improve their financial well-being and their health. We want people to contribute to society and local communities and to fully enjoy life. Some of you may already know that AARP has a strong presence throughout Texas in many communities in this great state, including Austin, the capital city where I live and work. Again, this year, AARP Texas is bringing opportunities to our members and others through virtual events, just like this one that we're participating in today. We hope you have the opportunity to enjoy these free offerings. Not only are there programs to help unpaid family caregivers, but there are presentations to help people avoid being victims of fraud. We host fitness seminars and we work with city leaders towards making this an even more age-friendly community. And know this, volunteers are critical for our mission. There are many opportunities for those who can give a little time to volunteer. You can learn more about these local happenings at aarp.org/TX or find us at the AARP Texas Facebook page. But again, of course, family caregiving is a priority. There are 48 million family caregivers in the US, 3.4 million in Texas alone. They provide help to loved ones, usually a parent, spouse, or sibling. Caregiving can be anything from driving a loved one to a doctor's appointment, making sure bills are paid, cleaning the house, or helping bathe and dress. And many caregivers do fairly complex medical tasks. Caregivers come from every generation, from Gen Z to the silent generation, and every racial and ethnic group. And you know, most of us will either be a caregiver or need care at some point during our lives. AARP recently released new research on how much family caregivers spend out of their own pockets to care for a loved one. We found that almost every caregiver spends money on caregiving, and about 8 in 10 routinely spend their own money on caregiving. The average amount that caregivers spend each year is $7,240. That's more than a fourth of their household income on average. Housing expenses like rent or mortgage payments, assisted living, and home modifications make up more than half of caregiver spending, followed by medical expenses. Caregivers also experience indirect financial setbacks, often postponing their own personal savings for retirement. But I am here to tell you there's action that can help. Congress is considering a bipartisan bill called the Credit for Caring Act, which would create a tax credit of up to $5,000 for working family caregivers. This could help offset some of those major expenses that we know caregivers are facing. AARP, along with 80 other organizations, endorsed the Credit for Caring Act. Family caregivers are the backbone of our long-term care system that they are breaking under the pressure. Creating a tax credit for family caregivers is one way that Congress can help. If you would like to learn more about the Credit for Caring Act, visit aarp.org/caregiving. There, you will also find many resources available for family caregivers just like you. So again, that's aarp.org/caregiving. Thank you for listening. Again, I'm Jessica Lemon with AARP Texas, and thank you for all that you do as family caregivers or to support caregivers.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Rob Fabian. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Age of Central Texas, and along with our partners over at the Area Agency on Aging of the Capital Area, we are so glad that you're joining us for today's second session of our 20th anniversary of the Striking a Balance Caregiver Conference. Age and Area Agency on Aging have been partnering for 20 years to bring you this free conference, and we're so glad that you're here today. A few little issues that we'll talk about real quick before I introduce the speaker. We are recording our session today. So if you have any technical issues or you have to leave us early, don't worry, because we are recording the session. We're going to post it on YouTube, and we will send you that link later so that you can go back and watch it later or share it with other family members. We also sent you the program for this year's conference. We hope that you take a look at that, because not only does it have great information about all of our speakers, but also we curated a number of caregiving resources just for you. So there's a lot of great information in that program that can help you in your caregiving journey. Finally, there is a chat feature right down here at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a thought bubble that you see in the comic strips. Click on that and it'll open up the chat box. We want you to ask your questions while Sarah is doing her presentation today, because after all, this presentation is for you. The Striking a Balance Caregiver Conference is the longest running and largest caregiver conference here in Central Texas. And every year we bring you the best experts we can find to answer your questions and provide you with the best information that's available. So we want you to take advantage of this opportunity. Ask your questions. And then at the end of the session, Rhonda Thompson from the Area Agency on Aging is going to join us, and we're going to answer your questions. Now, we may not get to every single question because our time is limited. We said we would stop at 2:30 today, and we're going to honor your time because your time is valuable. So if we don't get to every single question, don't worry. We will contact you directly and we will answer your question. But please take advantage of this opportunity. Ask those questions because you have an amazing expert here today to answer them. Finally, at the end of this week, we're going to send you an electronic survey. And we ask that you please take just a couple of minutes. That's all it'll take to answer this survey, because it helps us in planning for next year. In fact, every single speaker and topic that we have for this week were selected based on the survey from last year of all the participants, because we want to meet you where you are in your journey and bring you the best information that we possibly can. So be sure, ask your questions today, fill out the survey at the end of the week. All right. It is my pleasure to welcome Sarah Hyde-Williams today. She is the founder of Senior Living Advisors of Austin. She's been a great partner for all of us here in Central Texas for a number of years. She's been an elder care expert and community resource for quite a while. She's had various roles in the assisted living and dementia supportive communities, along with home health and hospice care. So she has a wide range of knowledge. She currently serves as the entire Central Texas area as the facilitator and educator for the Lewy Body Dementia Association. She's also an active member with both the National Association of Senior Advisors and the National Placement and Referral Alliance. Plus, she holds a plethora of certificates and licenses. Sarah, we are so excited to have you with us today to talk about dementia care. And as we know, as caregivers, dementia is a whole nother animal when it comes to caregiving. So I am going to turn it over to you and let you enlighten us with information. And again, for those who are joining us, be sure and ask those questions in the chat. Thank you, Sarah. It's all yours.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Rob. And we thank Age of Central Texas for bringing this conference to us, AARP, and all the other sponsors. What an absolute privilege to be able to speak to you for the second year in a row. Last year, we talked about when it's not Alzheimer's and some of the other dementias such as Lewy body, frontotemporal, and vascular dementia. Today, we're going to take that into that next step of some communication skills that are very practical for care partners loving and working with those loved ones with dementia. So hopefully you guys enjoyed Dr. Jacobs. Isn't he wonderful? Yes, I love listening to him every single year. I hope you found great value in compassion and self-care, and you've taken that next step to continue that self-compassion, self-care in educating yourself and gaining support specifically with Age of Central Texas and the AARP in learning more about how you as a care partner can give better care and better communication skills with your loved one. So let me share my screen. And please bear with me. We got a brand new office in the last couple of days. My setup is different, so I may struggle slightly with my setup here. So I am going to share this. There we go. Practical communication skills in dementia care. So the biggest challenge that I often see when care partners come to me for a consultation, for education, for resources, is how do I communicate best with my loved one? How do I do that in a dignified, respectful manner in which I can honor them and honor myself through better communication? And so we thought we'd talk through some communication skills today, but not knowing exactly who is joining us today, where you are in your journey, if you are early in that journey and need some good basic information, we're going to start there with how the brain functions, what is dementia, nonverbal versus verbal communication, then really getting the meat of some practical tools. So let's move on to the next slide. Rob did a beautiful job with introducing me. Thank you. Yes, I carry way too many credentials. This just means that I continue to be very serious about learning and educating myself on what dementia is and how I can best support care partners. Specifically, if your care partner has Lewy body dementia or Parkinson's disease dementia, we have a support group for you. Many support groups in Central Texas. I lead the one specifically for Lewy body. So if you need more information about that, please feel free to reach out afterwards. The very last slide of my presentation will have my contact information, and I welcome any questions from there. So as we go along, yes, put your questions in the chat. If it pertains particularly to what we're talking about at the moment, I'm going to stop Rob. I'm going to ask him if there are a few questions pertaining so we can clear that up, and then we'll move on. So, all right. So the biggest misconception I think we often have, and where care partners come to me, is I'll ask specifically what type of dementia their loved one has. And they said, the doctor just said dementia, but Alzheimer's is dementia, right? So it's all the same thing. And so we have this thought process in our head that Alzheimer's equals dementia equals memory loss. And you'll even see that in our long-term care settings to where they're called memory care communities. I'd like to kind of flip that and call them dementia supportive communities, because dementia is a wide range. Many of you have probably seen the umbrella, the picture of the umbrella of dementia with all of the disease processes down below. Dementia at its very core is a disruption in thought, processing, thinking, or language skills that interrupts our everyday life. So is it something that on an everyday basis really disrupts what we're trying to do in living our life? This is beyond simply, I'm headed out the door for work and I can't find my keys. This is more so, I walked into the kitchen, I forgot why I walked in there. Now I need to retrace my steps and bingo, it comes to me. So these are, sometimes I give the analogy of, if a much younger person, a spouse, a child, were to have some of those red flags that you're seeing in an aging loved one, would it denote dementia? Would it denote something that's out of the ordinary? And for a lot of folks, yes. So those red flags are telling you in your gut that that needs a neurological exam, that needs at least a visit with a physician to see if it's something greater than that. I did forget to say in my bio that I am a daughter of an aging parent as well. So I'm with you in this. I understand that sometimes we don't have all the answers, but yet we're continuing to seek answers, seek education, seek support, and you're doing a great job by joining the session today. So we're glad you're here. So the last slide, I moved on beyond, I said that it's much more than just memory loss. It's confusion, it's thought processes that may be slightly irrational, it's impulsivity, it's delusional thought process, it's loss of language, it is the loss or the oversensitivity of those senses, tasting, hearing, smelling, sight. There's so much more than just memory loss. So yes, dementia is that overarching term in which Alzheimer's is a disease process within dementia, but they're not always synonymous, and it doesn't always equal memory loss or the inability to form those short-term memories or those pieces of information into our long-term memory bank. So at its very core, dementia is brain death or brain failure. So you're probably thinking to yourself, my loved one doesn't look sick. They don't look like they have they don't look like they have dementia. So think of it this way, the brain runs the body. And when the brain can no longer tell the body what to do, the brain looks ill. And it's not until we have brain loss of 1 pound or more, or a third of our brain capacity, that we begin to show that outward appearance. Think of it this way, such as in cancer. Sometimes we can go along until we have these signs and symptoms that don't seem right. We go to the doctor and get a diagnosis of either stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. It doesn't show on the outside until we are fairly progressed. So think of dementia in the very same way. So for some of our folks who have not seen this slide before or heard the explanation of some of the ways that the brain works, let's go through this briefly. So hopefully you can see my cursor on the screen. I'm going to put it right down here. Right here above the cerebellum, above the brainstem, is the hippocampus. It's shaped like a seahorse. And so this, along with our limbic system, are the portions of the brain that allow us to make new memories. They capture all those little bits of information and they store them elsewhere in the brain that we can retrieve those at any given point in time. So that's when we say, remember, and we go, oh yeah, I remember that now. Yes. So that's the ability to not only convert those into longer term memories, but to other portions of the brain to retrieve that. So without this portion of the brain, we can no longer learn new information, nor can we retain it. So when this portion is damaged, we often see in our loved one asking the same question over and over and over again. Have I taken my medication? Have I eaten today? When is our doctor's appointment? So we get those repetitive questions over and over and over again. And because they can no longer recall the information that we just gave them. So this means that we need to stop giving them multi-step commands. Instead of, come on, let's go. It's time to go to the bathroom and brush our teeth. That gets reduced to, let's go to the bathroom and get our toothbrush, or simply let's go to the bathroom. And then at the very core, at the very end, we're simply doing those nonverbal gestures of, come on, let's go. So we need to break that down into very, very simple commands as the disease process goes on. So our frontal lobe right here in the very front, it's that pink area. If you'll put your hand right over your forehead, this is exactly that portion. And so this is the portion of our brain that has speech, the recall, the use of speech, facial recognition, impulsivity, attention, sometimes changes in personality. Judgment is oftentimes greatly reduced, imagination and impulse control. So these temporal portions of the brain, so they're right here and back above our ears. You have two of them, one on the right and one on the left. This is the lobe that contains language. So when we no longer have the ability to use words, language and speech correctly, we call that aphasia. And so that is greatly affected in those temporal lobes. Your left lobe is where formal language is held. The names of objects, facts, meanings of words. This is usually the part of the brain that dies first. And so if we don't have the left portion of our brain, what do we have left? We have the right portion of our brain. And so this is all the fun stuff. This is where we have forbidden words like curse words or racial slurs. This is where we also have singing and music and rhythm. This is where we have that automatic yes or no. And this is also where we formed our social chit chat. So as a child, we get into that, how are you today? I'm fine. How's the weather? It's beautiful outside. Thank you for asking. And so we have this little exchange. And oftentimes I hear care partners say, but mom sounds fine. She's able to have a conversation. However, her brain has greatly reduced in size, but she's holding on to this right brain ability to continue with this social chit chat. So something to at least give thought to. All right, so verbal versus nonverbal communication. How much, can you guys type in the chat box, and Rob's gonna monitor this for me. How much of our communication is verbal opposed to nonverbal? What are your thoughts on that? So about 10% of communication is verbal. It's what we say. It's how we say it. It's the words we say, the tone of voice that we take. And those, that is just a small portion of how we interact with others. 90% or the bulk of our communication is that non-verbal communication. This is the look on our face. This is the way we hold our body. Whether we're happy and approachable, or whether we're sad and it gives this impression of, nope, don't bother me right now. It's how we hold our body, it's gestures, it's how we're pointing, it's our hands on our hips, those types of things, the way we perceive sight and sound. Also in our folks, specifically because I do so much work with the Lewy Body Dementia Association, that's where the body of knowledge that I have is. And so a lot of our folks who have that, what we call dysautonomia, it's that dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. They are in constant fight or flight. So that nonverbal communication also, you'll either see, is our person a runaway person, a flight person, or is our loved one a fight person? Automatically, they're up for a fight. And so we need to understand, as the best detectives and are the care partners to our loved ones, Where are they in this process? Are there things that we need to pick up on that would allow us to be a better care partner? Are they hungry, thirsty? Do they need to go to the bathroom? Or what are they thinking? What are they feeling? And so being the best detective that we can, we have to pick up on these things. So in the dementia world, and oftentimes our long-term care settings, we call these unmet needs. You'll also hear the term behaviors. I like the term a lot better. It's a little bit more respectful and dignified if we use either responses or expressions. These are communication tools in nonverbal communications that we are having a reaction to something. Every behavior, reaction, or response or expression is a nonverbal response. And so it tells us, this nonverbal communication tells us best how to respond, how to react, how to approach. So Rob, are we all following? Are there questions about the way the brain functions, maybe nonverbal communication versus verbal communication?
No questions so far, but most people assumed that the nonverbal was only about 70%.
Ah, interesting.
So that 30% was verbal and about 70% was the nonverbal.
Yeah, still the greater majority of communication is nonverbal. It's the way we hold our bodies, what we say. I mean, not what we say, but how we gesture, and those things that maybe we can tell when someone grimaces in pain. Absolutely. And that maybe they need some pain medication, or we need to move. Maybe their legs are restless and we just need to walk that off. Absolutely. So being the best detective that we can for our loved one, we can best give care and be that care partner to them. So awesome responses. You guys are listening very carefully. You are responding in the chat box. I love interactive teaching sessions, webinars. Great job. So, all right. So I told you that I'd get you some practical tools. Here we go. So we are going to step right into some thought processes. There are 3 that I have to share with you today. These are not new concepts. We have some phenomenal teachers out in the dementia world. Tam Cummings being one of them. She's a gerontologist. She teaches a lot of webinars. So if you can catch hers, she is a teacher and trainer that is mostly associated with a memory care community here in town. Teepa Snow is also an occupational therapist who works in the realm of dementia. She has some phenomenal YouTube videos. If you have not searched her YouTube videos, you should. So none of the information that I'm going to share here today is brand new. It is from these teachers, from a lot of the educations that I have taken, but these are the most common that I hear care partners struggle with, specifically when it comes to communication with their loved one. So remember? No. Remember I told you, remember you agreed to that. Remember, we already took your medications. Oh, remember, we already had breakfast. No. Don't you remember? How many of us, raise your hand, how many of us are guilty of saying, remember? Oh my word. Early on, I remember I have done it. I will say that I did it just recently last week to my husband. Well, remember we talked about that. When we're working with folks with dementia, I want you to take that word remember and I want you to throw it out the window because it's not helpful. It simply focuses on the abilities that they have lost, things that they can no longer do. Their brain can no longer hold on to those little pieces of information. And so we want to focus on what they can do. Tam Cummings has a phenomenal analogy on this, and I'm going to take her words for a minute if she will allow me. We would never walk up to someone and ask a person with asthma or COPD to breathe. Breathe for me. You did it yesterday. I know you can do it. Just breathe. Or a person with an amputated lower extremity, right or left leg, to hop up out of their chair, walk or run across the room, or to run a race. We would never ask them to do that because that is a physical sight. That is a recognition of those things that they are no longer able to do. But why do we in dementia care continue to ask the person, our loved one living with dementia, if they can remember? We went back to the hippocampus, that along with the limbic system. And that's the reason I addressed this early on in the presentation, because I want you to link the two. The hippocampus and limbic areas can no longer grab those little pieces of information. Yes, we already ate. Yes, we took your medications. Yes, we're going to the doctor's office today. Bob, our nephew, is coming tomorrow. They no longer have that ability to take those little pieces of information and to store them into other areas of the brain to where they can be retrieved later. They do not remember. So we're going to take that word and we're going to throw it out the window. So that's number one. I have a lot of care partners that ask me about this. I hear it in verbiages when I go into long-term care settings. I am on a mission and a crusade to train our frontline staff to stop saying remember. So it no longer helps us as care partners. It simply makes ourselves and our loved one frustrated. So that's number one. So number two is resistance. How many of us get resistance from our loved one? We're trying to help, right? So we've asked our loved one to go into the bedroom. It's right after lunch. Visibly, there's food on the front of their shirt. We have asked them to go change their clothes. Either we've set out different clothes or we've asked them to go do that if they're early on in this disease process. We'll ask them to go change their clothes. They come out of the room and our first thought is, visibly, there's still food on the front of our shirt. Oh, I thought I asked you to go change your clothes. And their first response is, but I did. I just put these on. And we say, no, those are the clothes you wore at lunch. There's still lunch on the front of your shirt. And they're going to say, no, I just put these on. And so think of it as two opposing forces. You push, they push back. You push, they push back. And so in resistance of this sort, where are you going with this push and pushback? I would highly suggest that we're going nowhere. And who needs to figure this out? We do. We're the ones that are the care partners that have the fully enacted brain, that we need to play the best detective that we can and recognize that when we get in this resistance or this push and pull back and forth, we're not making any headway. We're not getting anywhere. So when you're a care partner, I want you to get ready. You're going to make mistakes. Simply get over it. All right. So if you want to be perfect, go get another job. You are not going to do this perfectly. And the sooner we recognize that, the better. So we simply don't push back. So here might be a suggestion. So let's go back to our situation that we talked about earlier. I thought you were going to change your clothes. And they come out and they say, but I did. I just put these on. And so let's repeat their words back to them. Oh, so you changed your clothes. what do we get from our loved one? Nothing. We don't get the resistance back and forth. We've simply reiterated their words back to them, and we validated, yep, they must have changed their clothes. So when you resist resistance, all you're going to get is resistance. Does that make sense? All right. So when all you see is the dementia and the resistance piece of this, instead of seeing the person with dementia, we're letting the dementia block the situation. So if we simply don't fight back or don't resist or don't try to argue or teach or correct, we take the pressure off of ourselves, we take the pressure off of them. So resistance, when we resist the resistance, all you are going to get is resistance. So that is a great tool for a lot of us that have these little exchanges back and forth, and all we do is go round and round and round and round. So
got a quick question for you, Sarah.
Yes.
In this scenario, how would you get them to change their clothes? You're going to validate what they feel and what they experience within their understanding, but how would you then accomplish the goal of getting them clean?
Yeah, great question. So we pick and choose our battles. And this may be something that we want to let it go for right now. And maybe we can readdress. And we always want to show before we tell. So maybe this is something to where in 30 minutes or an hour, we know that we do need to change clothes. There is something on our clothes. We either clean it off and accept it for what it is, or we go back to the situation and we step in simple commands of stepping through and working with them to get the clothes changed. We're not arguing with this verbal tit and tat back and forth in which that is not going, we're simply going to meet resistance every single time. However, every situation is different. So in this particular scenario, we don't necessarily know maybe what are trigger points, what are comfort measures, what this individual would accept over any other situation or try the bits of help that we might give them. And so we either let it go for right now and try again later to where we show rather than tell, or we simply let it go. So, and that's really hard when we're on the way out the door to a doctor's office, to a doctor's appointment, or going shopping and they've got lunch down their shirt. That one's a hard one. There's a lot of things we have to let go. So simply talking through that resistance just meets resistance.
And I'll point out that I had this very situation happen. And so what I did is said, oh, well, you look at that, you did change your shirt, but it looks like I put out a dirty shirt instead of a clean one. Here, let me get you a clean shirt and let's get you changed so that we can go to the grocery store, the doctor, wherever we were going.
Great idea. Absolutely. This is where number 3 comes into play. I'm sorry. So again, I told you that this information is not new. Teepa Snow put out a training about 2 or 3 years ago that was absolutely brilliant. I use this in my practice all the time. So there are 5 I'm sorries. We accept the mistake for that, not them. So there are 5 I'm sorries that I'd like for us to learn and to use on a regular basis to where we that are really good tools for us in working with our loved one. Number 1, I'm sorry I made you feel, and then you name the emotion or feel a certain way. This one is highly useful when they have anger, frustration, sadness. And so our reaction to them, or they have a certain emotion that we can come back with, I'm so sorry I made you angry. Well, boy, golly, did you make me angry. I'm not done talking to you yet. So we can validate the feeling, we can validate the emotion, because oftentimes people with dementia they're becoming less aware of what they're feeling inside. All they know is it doesn't feel right. So really, sometimes what we want to do is walk away. And oh boy, golly, they're going to continue, and it may escalate if we just simply walk away. We're going to continue to stand and apologize until the anger, the frustration, the sadness has disappeared. What do some of us want to do if there is an anger outburst or this emotion of absolute frustration? Oftentimes what we want to do is calm down. And so I will say that it doesn't feel good when someone does it to us. So why would we do it to our loved one? So you're telling me that I don't have a right to feel the way that I do. I don't have a right to feel angry or frustrated or sad or another emotion that they may go through. So simply reiterating, I'm sorry I made you, and give the emotion behind it is very, very helpful. So that's number one in our I'm sorries. Number two, I'm sorry, is I was just trying to help. I'm sorry, I was just trying to help. We need to acknowledge that we were trying to help and we made a mistake. Maybe they don't want our help. I will give a slight bit of, you've heard me use throughout this webinar, care partner as opposed to caregiver. Whatever term you want to use and that you are comfortable with is for you to decide. I love the thought process behind a care partner because it's both of us together working through this disease process of dementia or maybe a physical ailment. It's not us against each other. We are working in partnership. When we say caregiver, that means there's a giver and a receiver. We don't always want to be the giver. We don't always want to be the one that has to give and change and adjust, although we do need to be. But when there is a giver, there is a receiver. So that person can always feel like they are being maybe a burden or they have to be helped with something. They don't always want our help and can get quite frustrated with that. So number two in our I'm sorry's is, I'm sorry, I was just trying to help. Yeah, I made a mistake. I was just trying to help. So very helpful to use that terminology when they say, I can do it myself. Number three, I'm sorry, is I'm sorry I treated you like a child. Or sometimes we get, well, do you think I'm an idiot? Or do you think I'm stupid? No, I'm sorry I treated you like you were stupid. No, you are not. And where we find a lot of this is in our really, really intelligent folks, those that were in a form of either teaching or management, our CEOs, our doctors, our nurses, our PhDs. Well, by golly, I have a PhD. Do you think I'm stupid? I'm not stupid. No, I'm sorry I treated you like you were stupid. We want to acknowledge what they feel. And if we don't, they will escalate until we get it, until we understand that this is robbing them of the ability to feel smart and educated like they always have been. I've been the person in a high-ranking role. I told other people what to do. I've always had the answers. I'm highly educated. I know this. So therefore, we want to take a step back. And I'm sorry I made you feel stupid. It diffuses the situation and we no longer have that resistance. So, helpful? All right, I am hoping we are getting through this. We have 2 more. So number 1 through 3 again, if you are writing these down, of course, we're going to have the replay for you. But number 1, I'm sorry I made you feel, and put the emotion behind it. Number 2, I'm sorry I was trying to help. Well, you're not being very helpful. That's right. You are right. I was trying to help. Number 3, I'm sorry I treated you like a child, or I'm sorry I treated you like you were stupid. You are not stupid. You are not. All right. So number 4, and my absolute favorite, I use it all the time, is I'm sorry. This is hard. Especially when they're struggling. They can't find the word they're looking for. They're trying to get out through language skills, something that they know they should know. Well, you know, that thing that we go and we do and we use, yes, I know this is hard. And so what we're trying to diffuse in actuality is we're recognizing how hard this is. So you're not stupid. This is really hard. I understand is oftentimes what we like to use. It's okay, it doesn't matter. But oftentimes when we use that terminology, you're discounting what I feel. You're discounting how hard this is. And so we have to show them that we're on their side. I'm sorry, this is hard. This is so hard. Yeah, that's my favorite. And I use that one an awful lot, and I teach that to care partners. Number 5, and we finish up, is that I'm sorry, you're right. How hard is this one? I'm certain I'm going to get lots of chats about this one, but they're not right. They're wrong, and I know it. This one is the hardest to say in the moment with conviction when you know that they are absolutely wrong. But we're going to take that one upon ourselves, and we're going to say, I'm sorry, you're right. I should have asked. Or you're right. We did do this or that, or you're right. I'm sorry, you're right. And that one is so incredibly hard to say. None of these 5 I'm sorries are easy. However, it validates that they have a right to their feeling, their emotion, and that they are not children or stupid. They are simply living through a disease process that is really, really hard, and it robs us of being our best self and who we've always been, and smart and intelligent, and trying to get those words out. But if we can use one of these I'm sorries, it is incredibly helpful in diffusing the situation to where we can move on from there. So we have to remember to do their dance. And in doing their dance, we have to remember to let them lead. We are following their lead. We are validating what they're feeling, that this is really hard, that, yep, you're right. We're doing their dance. So, all right. So I'm going to leave you with one of my absolute favorite quotes. Be in the moment. You see them as whole people that we are in relationship with, and that we can support to the best of their abilities. We are going to build upon those abilities and skills that they have retained that they can do, and just let those things that they can no longer do or really greatly struggle with, we're going to let that go by the wayside. So be in the moment. And hopefully some of these tips and tricks, these practical tools of communication were helpful to you. And I'm sure we're going to get lots of great questions. I do a lot of consulting with families I will do a lot of education as well with families. I do a lot of training in long-term care settings, lots of onboarding when it comes to dementia care. So if you are a professional, if you are a caregiver partner, please feel free to reach out to me. There's my contact information. I'd be happy to chat with you. I'm sure we have lots of questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate that. You know, we always talk about with our loved ones who have dementia of being able to go into the dementia world, that we can't ask our family members to come back to our world because they just don't have that skill. So we have to go to dementia world. But I really like that analogy of letting them lead the dance. That's such a beautiful visual that I think as caregivers we can all really understand. Caregivers, this is your chance. Ask those questions. You've got an amazing expert here who can assist you with where you are in your journey. So use the chat box and ask those questions. And Rhonda, I'll let you keep an eye on those for us. We did have a question though, going back to your analogy on the your example of the shirt, of having a dirty shirt. You talked about going back to it later. You know, we're not going to worry about it now. We're going to be later. And you talked about using how to show someone. Can you follow up on that? Walk us through, let's say, okay, we're going 30 minutes later, we're going to go back and we're going to show. How would that look? Because that's something that has really clicked with a lot of these folks that are caregivers. You know, how do I do that?
Yeah. Great question. And thank you for the follow-up. This goes back to our verbal versus nonverbal communication. So we're just going to take the verbal and we're going to toss it to the side. We're going to use nonverbal communication. We're going to show versus tell. So we are going to, let's say, oftentimes our care partners will follow us throughout the house, or we say the gesture, come on, let's go. And so we can go into the bedroom. We can show them or give them the option of which shirt shall we try on now. And so then we simply lay it out. We do all of this in actions, in showing, not verbal in telling. So oftentimes, if we can take the verbiage out of it, the words, the language they no longer understand of how to process that and what that means, if we can show them through gestures and body language. Teepa Snow also has a beautiful video on, let's say it's time for shower time. And so or there's something on our shirt. Instead of saying there's something on your shirt, we're going to change it. Pointing to ourselves and having them look at our shirt. And then we're going to point at them. And so then, yes, there's something on your shirt. And we are simply going to take our shirt at the bottom and pull up on ourselves, and they will follow that. They have the ability to mimic or follow our nonverbal communication, those abilities of taking off the shirt. But if we don't do it for them and they can do it for themselves, better yet, show versus tell.
Great. So it's not necessarily we're going to look in the mirror and I'm going to point to it and show it on you, because for a lot of folks who have dementia, they look in the mirror and the person they see looking back is not them.
Correct.
So it's more of we're going to demonstrate what we're going to be doing.
Yes.
Wonderful. We had a question in our previous session about caregiver guilt. And in particular, the person was feeling very guilty that they were having to look at assisted living care for their loved one because they just were no longer able to perform the tasks that were needed. And can you address that a little bit on caregiver guilt? You and I talked about it a little bit before we started, and how that long-term care communities are just another tool that as caregivers we have in our arsenal. And so we should not feel guilty about using available tools.
Absolutely. You're so right on that. A large portion of what we do in our agency is long-term placement. So specifically assisted living and dementia care. So there's a lot of guilt and we feel poorly that we can no longer continue to care for our loved one in our own home or the home of their setting. Let's say they live right next to us and mom is living in her own home. We want her to be able to live there as long as she can safely. And so then let's say we're going over every single day and we still have a husband or a spouse or someone that depends on us. We may still have children in the home. We may still be trying to get our bachelor's, master's, or doctorate degree. We've got all of these things that surround our everyday life and we have a finite amount of time. I always tell care partners there are no coulda, shoulda, wouldas in dementia care at all. And we use the tools, like you said, to aid us in giving care or providing care. That doesn't mean we have to do every single bit of that heavy lifting ourselves. We use that tool for what it is that they are the professionals. They can do this full-time 24/7. I get to come and enjoy those lovely, simple meal or time or sitting outside feeding the birds or the squirrels. I get to spend that beautiful time with them, and the heavy hitting of toileting, bathing, transfers is left to professionals. So absolutely, we heap that on ourselves. I see it in online forums such as Facebook. Well, I kept my loved one at home and I cared for them myself through end of life. I'm going to give you kudos for that. Absolutely. A lot of us want to keep our loved one home for as long as we possibly can, thinking that home is the best environment. But when we can't give all of that attention and all of that care, and it is wearing us down, we have to recognize that we take a step back, we use the tool for what it is, and we allow someone else to do the heavy hitting. So.
One of our participants today says that she thinks that guilt is very different when you're a spouse. And, you know, that's understandable.
Yes.
You know, I've spoken with a number of caregivers, my mother included, who says, you know, I married for better or worse, and this is worse. But, you know, you didn't marry to become the 24/7 slave of this person.
Well, you promise to love, cherish, honor. And so you are doing what's best for both of you. We're keeping ourselves healthy. We're showing that self-compassion and that self-care in which we know our limits. And we utilize that long-term care community for what it is a tool.
And I think you hit it right on the head there when you said, know our limits.
Yes.
You know, we have to be honest with ourselves. You know, at some point, some of us say, I just can't do this anymore. And that's okay.
It is. It is perfectly okay.
Yeah. Another one of the folks joining us today says that I tell myself and my husband, this is temporary, taking care of mom in our home. And, you know, that's a perfectly okay way of looking at this. You know, I'm doing what I can now while I can. When it's no longer safe for mom, dad, husband, wife to be here in the home, or when I have run out of all of the energy that I have left to give, then maybe we need to look at another option. And as we mentioned, you know, long-term care is just another tool. It's another option. It's not giving up.
When I speak with families, let's say in a new diagnosis or early in that stage of mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia, to where we're putting it into place some items to help us down the road, we in our agency call this advanced care planning, and building a document of every single resource that they're going to need through this process. So we have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And we make the best decision based upon what we're working with, what abilities we have, what resources are available to us at the moment. And when that changes or that no longer works for us, we go to plan B. And we work plan B for as long as we possibly can. And then once the situation changes again, we make other arrangements from there. We work it as it comes to us, knowing, like you said very eloquently, we know our limitations and we know exactly what resources we have available to us to give best care.
All right. Rhonda Thompson from Area Agency on Aging, I'm going to ask you to jump in here with us and help us facilitate some of these questions. While you're doing that, there's one of our people joining us just entered a wonderful statement here saying that I try to remember that less talk is my goal now that my spouse of 50 years has moderate Alzheimer's. Hugs are the best.
I love that. Yes. I know, I'm gonna tell a really quick story. I follow a woman on Facebook, and if you'd like to follow her, I believe her Facebook page is called Oh Hello Alzheimer's. And she and her husband, he has early onset dementia, early onset Alzheimer's. He's 50s, early 60s, I believe, maybe late 50s. And every time they hear their song, no matter where it is, no matter what's going on, they look at each other across the room. He's no longer able to do this, but she still recognizes for as long as she can, she's going to. She goes over to him and they dance their dance. Absolutely. So hugs, dances, those little hold a hand as you're sitting watching TV or out in the backyard listening to the birds, those moments of sweet connection with our loved one need to be cherished and valued. We're not always going to have those, and we need to take those as they come.
That is so true. Rhonda, lead us through a few of the questions that we have. A reminder to everybody, we have about 20 more minutes, so please ask those questions. This is your chance to get that expert advice.
So we have a question about tips related to COVID with masks, staying home, or facility care at this time.
Oh, this is a tough one, and I'm going to fall on one line or another. So I'm going to thread this needle very, very carefully. So I hold a state licensure in the state of Texas as an assisted living manager. So I keep up with the state regulations quite carefully. So Health and Human Services puts out guidelines, very general guidelines on the way the communities do need to run. And so from there, each community setting or each corporate management company puts out their policies and procedures, and they have to stick with them. Some of these management companies are very regional across the United States. Some are in hotspots around the United States, and so are more cautious than others. However, it falls within that entire blanket of all the communities within their management company. So where we may not be having a red spot or an outbreak, we may be following corporate structures from California or Florida or New York. And so where I say there are generalized guidelines and then there are policies and procedures written, you are going to know your loved one best. Some communities have more lenient or more open or even more strict guidelines or policies and procedures than others do. And by connecting with someone who can walk you through that knows all the communities really well and can give you best guidance, you're going to make the determination for yourself whether or not we continue to ride this out in our own home, but who we have coming into the home on an everyday basis and who may transport that viral piece, or whether we move our loved one into a long-term care setting, knowing that they have really strict guidelines, policies, and procedures put in place for infection control and keeping all of their people safe. that is a really good conversation to have with family. It's a good conversation to have with an elder care consultant or a placement agent to know these communities and know them well on what all of your options are. Hopefully I threaded that needle very carefully, but that is a very individualized conversation that needs to happen and a decision that eventually gets made.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'd like to add that we have ombudsman staff, and ombudsman means advocate. We have staff at the Area Agency on Aging that are advocates for residents in nursing homes and family members, nursing homes and assisted living. And so if you have any questions or concerns about that, certainly reach out to our ombudsman staff here, or if you're in another area, there will be ombudsman, that's a hard word to say, ombudsman staff throughout Texas, and every state will have an ombudsman that you can contact. So they are advocates for families and residents, again, at nursing facilities and assisted living facilities. They're very busy. They've been very busy right now.
Rhonda, I'm so glad you mentioned that. So many families don't know there is such a thing as an ombudsman. And so if your loved one is in a community, absolutely, your ombudsman is your best advocate. Absolutely. Yeah. Reach out to them.
Good. So Sarah, we have another question. Can resistance of a care recipient result in abuse? What can you do if the resistance becomes abusive?
That is such a tough one. There are certain disease processes that, and specifically the individual in particular, depending on their background, if you've got a 6'3" man and a 4'9" spousal partner, each individual situation is going to be very, very different. However, get yourself safe in and of that moment. Because of the specific work that I do with dementia with Lewy bodies and Parkinson's disease dementia, it is very, very challenging. It's one of the most challenging disease processes of all dementia. So they're in constant fight or flight mode. And so they're either going to run, which 9 times out of 10 they're not, they're going to fight. And so we do find some of our spousal, during some of our spouses that can be in those moments of verbal or physical abuse. You know, a lot of our police officers, if we call 911, are better able at working with our folks that have dementia. We explain the situation, absolutely. A hospital stay might be in order to regulate medications. Some of our behavioral health hospitals in the area can regulate medications as well. Your doctor is a huge resource on what can we do medication-wise that can adjust this as well. But I've had folks, I serve as one of the 911 operators for the Lewy Body Dementia Association, and we do have those calls that come in. Get yourself safe. If you need to walk away and shut the door, then you do so. But that is the toughest of the tough situation. And I'm so sorry for anyone that finds themselves in that position.
You know,
Thank you, Sarah.
I was going to just say, you know, you mentioned the behavioral hospitals, and we do have a number of those here in the Central Texas area. And most of them do have specific wings within the hospital for older adults and for those who are living with dementia. And so with COVID right now, we know that if we go to the emergency room, we're probably not going to have any success. Unfortunately, all the emergency rooms are full, unfortunately. So that is a good option, is to contact a behavioral health hospital that's in your area, and they might be able to provide assistance with that.
Yeah.
And Sarah, I'm very glad you said to make sure you're safe, because a lot of times caregivers don't see they're at risk, that they're in danger. And we teach we have a Building Better Caregivers workshop where that is highlighted in one of the sessions. Is it's okay to contact 911. It's okay to get help, and it's okay to make sure that you're safe. It's like the airplane, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on before you,
Yes.
who you're caring for. And so it's very, very important that if you're not safe, you're not going to be able to take care of yourself or your care receiver, your care partner. And so that's very important. I think many caregivers need to hear that. So thanks for reinforcing that. And we did have another question. I'm going to skip down a little bit because this kind of goes along that line. How do we care for a parent who was abusive and unloving and handle the resentment?
Mhm.
And I would think that that's resentment toward the care receiver, the care partner. Do we?
That one is so incredibly tough. We all come at our relationships at very different stages. There are many counselors in the area that can walk you through that, can help you understand how to give dignified, respectful care when maybe there's a history of abuse or neglect, and now we're in the position to care for our loved ones, or it becomes into a situation of abuse through that. So incredibly difficult to walk through those types of situations. Knowing that we give compassion to ourselves, we give self-care, we seek help. There are numerous counselors, licensed marriage and family therapists that can walk you through that and allow this situation not to become resentful, but yet we're giving care or partnering with that loved one the best we can.
Okay. Just a quick one about my sister had her license suspended due to suspected dementia. Do people ever get their licenses back?
That's a tough one. It really is. I say when we're headed down that road, we need to figure out why it was suspended. Are there judgment errors in judgment, impulsivity? Our vision isn't what it could be. If some of those things can be changed or corrected, maybe. St. David's still has their wonderful program to assess for driving skills. And so if you're walking down that road now and need someone to assess and say, nope, it's no longer safe, we can do that. But I don't see if we've gone all the way down that road and a license has been suspended or taken away, I don't typically see it reinstated. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the best way to stop feeling frustrated?
Oh,
as a caregiver?
Frustration from what?
Yeah. Life, I would think, I don't know, as a caregiver.
As care partners, there's so many frustrating items, either something we don't understand about the disease process. Maybe our loved one doesn't understand where we're trying to help. Maybe they don't understand some of the decisions that we need to put in place. And that can all cause frustration. There's a million reasons for that. I always say kind of step back. Okay. And recognize that you are the care partner with a fully formed, intact mental thought process. And we make the best decisions for what we can at the moment. If we're in and of the moment, we either step back, we take a moment, put ourselves in timeout. A lot of us put our kids in timeout when they were frustrated or angry or sad. And so we do the same thing for ourselves. We walk away for a second. We remember who is the care partner that can think through this. Sometimes being a good detective of what is causing the frustration in the first place. Are we having expectations on our loved ones that are not realistic?
And somebody said frustrated about repetitive behavior.
Oh, that one is a tough one. Yes. That one gets a lot of care partners. They've asked the same question over and over again. One of the things that I will say to care partners, if the questions are surrounding what is going to happen in the future, there is a fear, there is an anticipation there. Don't tell your loved one until we are ready to go. until that activity is going to happen, because you're going to reduce that from their thought process of having to be anxious or having those repetitive questions of, oh my word, are we missing a doctor's appointment? Is it time to leave now? Is it time to go to the doctor's appointment? I know our appointment is at 10 o'clock. Is it time to go? And so just simply do not tell them until it is time to walk out the door or do that activity.
Great.
Might be one of the frustrations.
And I'll
Yeah.
also chime in here that sometimes when they're asking repetitive questions, it's because they don't know how to ask the question to get the answer of what they really want. I heard a wonderful presentation by a person who was caregiving for her father. And she said that every night after he got out of the shower, he would always ask, where's mom? Where's mom? Mom had been dead for 15 years. Where's mom? Where's mom? And, she didn't want to go down the road of saying, mom's dead, because then that's going to start a whole nother ball of wax. But she finally said, why do you need mom? And the answer was, mom is the only one who knows where my pajamas are.
Yeah.
And so the question wasn't, where's mom? The question is, where's my pajamas?
Yep.
And
Good
so
point.
sometimes it's, drilling down gently to find out what is really behind the question itself.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about repetitive behaviors, can you talk a little bit about redirection? Because as care partners, we hear that a lot of people saying, oh, if, in the case of repetitive, then just redirect the person. What does that mean? How do you do that?
So I have mixed feelings on redirect. So if we are redirecting for our convenience and we're not in and of the moment of why the question is being asked or why the repetitive behavior or what they're trying to, there is an unmet need there. So are they anxious? Are they wet or soiled? Are they hungry? Are they looking for something that is causing a behavior, a response, an expression that maybe we don't understand, but getting behind the scenes? And if a person is wet and it's an uncomfortable feeling and they're having some sort of a behavior, response, expression that we might not fully understand, they're wet, it's not a redirection. We don't need to get them involved in another activity or to another part of the house or the community. We simply need to, they're trying to tell us that they're wet and they need their pants changed. So if we can be the best detective that we can possibly be and understand what's the underlying cause of why we think they need to be redirected in the first place, then we can sometimes eliminate some of that. So redirection is really not what they need. They have an unmet need that we need to fix, and then we're good to go.
Excellent. Talking about being frustrated and as a care partner, and how do you deal with that? One thing that I have utilized is journaling. And, I am the last person in the world to sit down and write about my feelings. But just getting it out of my brain so I stop dwelling on it and write it down, let it go, has been a really good tool for me. There are lots of great websites. We talked about AARP. They have tons of caregiver resources on their website that can help in all these types of situations. And as Rhonda mentioned, putting your oxygen mask on first is always so important. We always tell caregivers that's not being selfish, that's being realistic. Because if you are not able to care for the person that is your care partner, if you become sick, if stress wears you down to where your immune system is compromised, if you end up something happening to you, who's going to take care of the other person? You have to take care of yourself. You have to use respite. You have to take your times out. You have to disconnect and recharge your battery. It's just vital for your own self-welfare.
Yeah.
We
And-
had another, I'm sorry, I was just going to say, we had another comment and a question. Somebody said they recently had a very difficult time having her husband with Alzheimer's admitted to a psych hospital when he was suicidal. It was a nightmare. And the question is, can you provide suggestions?
I need a little bit more information, suggestions on how to avoid or work through that.
Maybe both.
Okay. So our psychiatric hospitals, what we oftentimes refer to as behavioral health hospitals, are there to be a resource to us. They are to be an acute type medication adjustment period. They are not always the solution in all cases. Your doctor can be a very good resource to you. Support groups, they might have some resources of how they worked through that situation and avoided it. If you're in that situation and it was a nightmare for some reason or another, I don't know the entire circumstance, but I'm going to assume, and if I could project what my thoughts are on this, is that maybe it didn't work. Maybe for one reason or another, they were admitted to the behavioral health hospital and they stopped eating or drinking, taking anything by mouth. Can't get your medications in you if you stop eating or drinking. Let's say they were not adjusted or adjusted well, and it just, that time was wasted there. There's so many different resources to reach out. All the resources here today can be of help for some items that we can pull upon to, someone's got the answer to be helpful that will be helpful in your situation.
Well, and we've got a further response that getting him admitted to the psych hospital didn't want to take him because of his Alzheimer's.
Yes. So a lot of our behavioral hospitals, if Alzheimer's, frontotemporal, Lewy body is the only diagnosis, they're not there to treat the dementia. They are there to treat a behavioral health issue, so a mental health issue. And so there has to be some underlying cause of what needs the medication adjustment. Also, I don't know if our viewers know this today, but it's very difficult to get someone into a behavioral health hospital if you do not have a specific document called a mental health power of attorney. That is in addition to your medical power of attorney and your durable or your financial power of attorney. So in those cases, they have to be assessed, probably like a doc-to-doc review. And yes, this is appropriate for us. And they have to have a police officer deem them on some sort of a hold in which to get them in. It is very difficult, specifically if dementia and why we're adjusting their medications is the only diagnosis.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's also a suggestion from another caregiver who says in these circumstances to get the doctor involved, as you said, Sarah, most definitely. If you're in an emergency situation, call 911 and ask for the mental health officer. 911 does have mental health professionals that they employ, and that your care partner would have to be a danger to themselves or others so that the mental health officer can then make the instruction for the admission into the hospital.
Yes.
We're running out of time here, and I'm so sorry because these are such wonderful conversations, but it's a good point to make that for everyone who's joining us today, that if you are having issues, because everyone's journey is different, everyone's experiences are different, and that's why organizations like Area Agency on Aging, Age of Central Texas are here to help you. So wherever you are in that journey, if you need assistance on finding resources, if you're not sure what to do next in your particular situation, give us a call. That's why we're here. And I want to point out, because I do this at pretty much every single session that we have, there is never, ever any shame in asking for help. All of us need help at some point in our life. None of us know all the answers. And that's why organizations like ours, why wonderful people like Sarah and her company are here. It's to provide that help. And so no matter what your situation is, we know from personal experience, dementia care is difficult. It is really hard. We know that. We're doing it too. But we know how to find the resources for you. And so please let us help you with that. One last thing, someone was asking about, how do you get a mental health power of attorney? We have on the AGE YouTube website, if you go to YouTube and just search Age of Central Texas, we have several videos that we have done of other sessions on all of the pieces of paper that you need to have as a caregiver, the power of attorney, the medical power of attorney, the differences between a will and a living will, and all these different items with a lot of the experts here in Central Texas providing that information. So go and look for that. And those videos are there from our previous conferences that we've done, when they will have all of your answers. You can always just search as well for that, or another plug for Area Agency on Aging, give a call to their resource center and they will walk you through all that as well.
Yes, I was going to say, Rob, we have, if you contact us, 512-916-6062, you can ask for our information referral person. Our benefits counselors who are trained in Medicare and other public benefits can access those documents, the mental health POA, as well as the other documents needed. That's our benefits counselors. Just reach out to the Area Agency on Aging and we can get whatever documents, we can connect you with those as well.
Right, and remember, those services are absolutely free for you. So please take
no cost, absolutely.
Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. A lot of heavy things to talk about as caregivers, and we appreciate you talking us through these with honesty and clarity. Thank you so much. Rhonda, thank you for joining us and helping us as well. And everyone at home, we thank you for taking your time out today and spending your time with us. We will be back tomorrow and again on Thursday. We've got 4 more amazing sessions to share with you. So we hope you have a great rest of your day and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks, have a great evening.